Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Immigration Fridays. I'm your host, Prashanti Vedi, and we're here again to navigate the ever evolving maze of US immigration. This week, we're going to talk about K visas. So, let's start off with what is a K visa. A K visa permits a foreign citizen fiance to travel to the United States and marry his or her US citizen spouse within 90 days of arrival. So, for people who cannot get married outside the country, they're allowed to get engaged outside the country and then come to the United States as fiancés and then get married. But of course, because there's so much fraud involved in this particular category, there are some strict requirements with reference to the fiancé visa. Let's first start off with who is a fiancé. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, a fiancé, an alien fiancé, is a person who has an approved I-129F petition. So the I-129 form has to be filed by USCIS. And it has to be a person who has been issued a non-immigrant K-1 visa. So you have to go to the consulate once the I-129F is approved and then get a K-1 visa. The requirements after that is that the fiancé, after coming into the United States, should get married to the US citizen within 90 days. In general, the US citizen sponsor and the fiancé should have met in person within the last 2 years. But there are certain exceptions to this rule. You can show extreme hardship, and you can show that if it's contrary to the US citizen sponsors or foreign citizen fiancé's culture for a man and woman to meet before marriage, then you can show that as an exception as to why they did not meet before marriage. Now let's go into the filing of the petition. How is it filed? Let's look at the first step. The first step is the US citizen sponsor must file an I-129F petition with the USCIS. The address that it has to be filed at depends on where the US citizen sponsor is located, where they're residing in the US. Once the I-129F petition is approved, then the USCIS sends it to the National Visa Center. The National Visa Center will then in turn send it to the consulate, and they will send you a letter when they forward the application to the consulate. Now, once you get an email from NVC stating that your petition has been sent to the US consulate, several steps take place after that. So let's see what required documentation is needed before you go for your US visa. You have to complete a DS-160 online. You have to have a passport valid for travel. You have to have your birth certificate. Make sure you take your original with you and submit a photocopy. You have to have a divorce or death certificate if you've previously been married. You have to have a police certificate, police clearance that you have not committed a crime, where you have lived for more than 6 months. So wherever you have lived in India for more than 6 months, if you are in India or any other foreign country, you have to take a police clearance from the local police station there. Medical examinations and vaccinations are recommended. Evidence of financial support. So a Form I-134 has to be submitted as evidence of financial support. 2 photographs, 2x2 size, evidence of relationship with your US citizen fiancé, and of course you have to pay the fee. Some tips for filing these kind of petitions. Let's go to the tips now. You have to remember that in these kind of petitions there is a lot of fraud. In order to overcome that fraud, that finding of fraud from the consulate, even when you're filing your I-129F petition with USCIS, it's important to submit as much documentation as possible so that you can prove to USCIS and to the consulate that it's not going to be a fraudulent marriage, or that the fiancé is actually your fiancé, that the engagement has taken place. Such information can be provided through photographs to show that, there are many photographs. Maybe you've been on vacations. You can submit email correspondence. You can submit letters. You can submit affidavits for people who know you that, your engagement actually took place and that the person is actually your fiancé. If something legal was done, if in your country or in your culture rings are exchanged, etc., something that was done to that effect, then you can submit documentary evidence of that as well. So this is some of the information to be careful about, some documents that have to be provided in order to ensure that your fiancé visa gets approved. Now let's go through some of the common questions that are asked for these, the frequently asked questions for K1 visas. How long does the K1 visa take? The K1 visa takes, processing time can vary. I-129F, I would suggest you go to the USCIS website and check the service center where your I-129F is filed to see what the current processing times are. Similarly, in order to get a visa at the consulate, you'll have to first apply for an interview date, and that can be vary as well depending on the country you're at. After you receive a K1 visa, what has to be done? After you receive a K1 visa, you will be given a sealed envelope. Do not open that sealed envelope. Once you go to your port of entry, when you arrive in the US, the Department of State will take that sealed envelope from you and they will process it. In the meantime, as soon as you come in, within 90 days, you should get married to your US citizen fiancé. So that now that person is your US citizen spouse. You can then apply for adjustment of status, a 485, and you will get advance parole, which will allow you to travel, and you will also get employment authorization. Remember, the K1 visa is a one-time entry, it's not multiple entry. So you have to make sure that you follow all the process so that you're able to leave the country and re-enter on an advance parole if required. Does my child get a K2 visa? Yes, absolutely. A separate application is not required. They're covered in the I-129F petition, but when you're going for a visa, you have to apply for a DS-160 for your child as well and pay the fee as well. Are my children required to travel with me? It's good if they travel with you, but it's not required. You can also do a follow to join and they can travel later. Entering the United States with reference to port of entry. Which port of entry should you enter from? A visa allows a foreign citizen to travel to the US port of entry and request permission to enter the United States. You should be aware that, however, that a visa does not guarantee entry into the US. The DHS, the US CBP have authority to permit or deny admission to the US. So you have to remember that even if you have a visa, there's no guarantee that you will be allowed into the country, but most probably you will if there is no issue with your visa and any documents that you carry. So with that, my friends, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening, and please tune in next week, for another episode of Immigration Fridays. Bye-bye.